Happy Halloween and welcome to the Signal Watch. I'm your ghost, Ryan Steens. Once again, our cadre of co-contributors creep from the crypt for a spooktacular season of petrifying podcasts. We're reaching into our bag of tricks to line up some horrific treats in the phantasmagoric form of films that find a peculiar perspective on familiar frights. Stay terrified. We're going to try to make it work.
White on white, translucent black capes, back on the rack. Fella who goes is dead. The back.
Happy Halloween! And welcome to the Signal Watch Halloween Spooktacular 2022. I'm here this creepy evening with
Simon Day again. Hello. Lovely to be back on perhaps our last Halloween episode.
Yes, this is how we're closing out. Absolutely.
Is definitely.
Yeah.
You're like, no more.
Well, I say that, but I might be doing Halloween Ends with Marshall, so we'll see where that ends up getting released or whatever.
Well, we're not going out with a bang, but we're going out with something. I'm not quite sure what.
Well,
that sounds like I'm putting it down, but I'm not.
I had when I posted The Hunger this week, I had more than one person say to me, "Are you doing Near Dark?"
I've seen that. Oh, okay. That's even better.
Yeah. And I said, in fact, we're recording this week. We're recording Near Dark. And here we are.
We've got one person on our wavelength. That's the start of a fan club. Very small fan club.
Ironically, it's a person who has, I don't think, ever actually listened to the podcast. He just saw where I posted it to Facebook. He's an old friend from high school. But he was also the person who told me to watch The Hunger the first time. So,
good taste.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Excellent. So we're not to steal your thunder, but we're talking about Near Dark from 1987, directed by Catherine Bigelow, and starring
a host of lovelies, a gorgeous, as a smorgasbord of gorgeous lovelies. We have it's a bit of an Aliens reunion, isn't it? Because we've got like Lance Henriksen, Bill Paxton, and Jeanette Goldstein, all together as a kind of vampire family. It's got my mate, the governor, second only to I can't remember his name now. Who do I like from Halloween 3? But who's the guy in Halloween 3?
Tim Thomerson?
Yeah. So it's like Tim Thomerson from Trances. But I was going to say he's up there with the person whose name I can't remember from Halloween 3, who we also like.
Okay.
It'll come back. But yeah, and then the two leads, Adrian Pastar, who I don't really know, to be honest, and Jenny Wright of the Young Lovers.
Right. He's a workhorse. He's in tons of stuff. He's most recently I saw him. He's acted since, obviously, but he for our superhero fans, on Supergirl he played, I think, Maxwell Lord, or one of the usual human villains. So yeah. Bruno Mannheim, that's who I think he played. Anyway, and then
great cast. And written by Eric Red, who also wrote The Hitcher and Bad Moon. So he was kind of like a bit of an It man for horror around this time.
My understanding is from I listened to the director's commentary. Was that they were thinking of writing a Western and were told don't. And so they're like, well, what's popular that we can sell? Horror, vampires,
Was
which
that
I
because
don't.
the cost they couldn't do the Western?
I think they thought that they just couldn't get any studio backing for doing a Western at that time, which is an odd thing to think of because this
Tom
is kind of
Atkins,
Tom
by the way.
Atkins. Yes, correct. That is the power of rumination, people. But yeah, they didn't think they could get studio backing for a Western, but they thought they could for a horror film. The funny thing about that is,
Well, there's that Sunrise, the Vampire in Retreat film around this time about vampires in a Western, isn't it? So that's kind of interesting that they couldn't get the funding.
yeah, I mean, this was kind of them splitting the difference. They're like, it'll be modern so we can save money. It'll be in the West, sort of, so we can get that Western vibe. But we're also going to make it a horror film. And I think all of that ends up really out playing to a really interesting film.
Well, it's a bit of a genre. It's like we enjoy, which is a bit of a genre kind of spliced together, a couple of genres. And so it also reminded me a bit of like almost like Outlaws kind of on the run film, a bit like Badlands type thing.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe Tarantino was a fan because I'm thinking Dusk Till Dawn was kind of like had a bit of the same kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
But I think lesser well done or not as intelligent.
Yeah, it's an interesting film because I think it's a little bit like seeing the Velvet Underground at a certain point. It's like not that many people saw them, but everybody who did picked up a guitar. And I mean, I don't think Jamie had seen it before we were watching it. I've known very few people who've over the years, I mean, with Justin and folks like that, of course, have all seen it.
Jamie liked it more than The Hunger.
So I don't know. Jamie decided to check out at the bar scene when she realized what was about to happen.
Oh.
And she did not complete the film subsequently. So
that's a shame.
Yeah, it is. And it's a double shame because I have also since regifted my DVD of the movie to Marshall. So it's not, I don't have access to it anymore.
So that's interesting. So why did you give your DVD away? Because I was going to say, this is a film that I think I've always respected more than loved. So it's not like Predator or Aliens or RoboCop where I could watch it once a day, every day. Mm-hmm. If I was, felt like it. It's not like comfort food. Mm-hmm. I always remember like it. I probably saw it for the first time on TV. And I watched it and I was like, that was good. But I always kind of respected it. And I remember like 20 years ago, I probably bought this DVD, this Anchor Bay DVD, which at the time was very flashy.
Yeah, that was what I had. Was the Anchor Bay? Yeah.
Yeah, with all the commentaries on the stuff. But the interesting thing is, I didn't keep it, which is normally a sign that either I've watched the film way too many times and I have several copies, or I know I'm not going to watch it that often. And the fact that I had given it away and probably not watched it in 20 years kind of sums it up a bit. The fact that I had to buy it again. Because, this time I was like, okay, I'm an older gentleman now, of more refined tastes. And, I enjoyed it again. I think I appreciated it a bit more, but I still didn't love it. I still kind of went, that was very well made. Very good horror film, intelligent. There's a lot of stuff going on there, but I didn't feel a kinship really.
I would say I did not give away the DVD because I didn't think I would watch it again. I gave it away because Marshall and I were talking, and he heard I had a copy of the DVD, and it was his birthday. So Marshall got the DVD
You
for
got
his
lucky.
birthday. Yes. I was like, well, I have this DVD I can gift you.
I've
Happy
literally
birthday.
finished watching this. I'm not going to watch it for another 6 months. So there
Yeah.
you go.
And I also, frankly, am anticipating they'll put out a Blu-ray in the next few years, and I'll just buy that then.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, I don't. I think this is an incredibly, and don't take this the wrong way, but this is an incredibly American take on vampires. In a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree with that.
I mean, it's, they're running around in the West. There's no ties to, they're not coming out of Europe. They're not coming out of the East. It's not tied in any way to any of that kind of lore. And it's really pragmatic vampirism, right? It's,
But it's also not that spectacular. It's actually not that horrific, really, because I don't think they ever use the word vampire.
well, they don't ever use the word vampire, but I don't know if I would say it's not horrific. But
well, there's not like, I mean, when I say that, I mean, it's more like, I mean, again, like Outlaws. It's more like a kind of Tarantino outlaw film.
Yeah.
Than, a horror film, because there's no real fangs. There's no ripping people apart. There's no gore effects. It's more just, these unsavory types who kidnap this guy and then his dad trying to get him back, really,
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think that the scene in the bar is always kind of what sticks with people with this movie.
I suppose, just off the top of my head, I was thinking, take John Carpenter's Vampires. That's kind of similar setting, but John Carpenter kind of revs up, for better or worse, whatever you think about the film, the quality of the film, that revs up the horror side of it. Mm-hmm. So so you still have this kind of like Western type vibe, and James Woods is in it as a bit of like the kind of like the Clint Eastwood type who's cleaned up the town, but but it's a lot more horror, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, I think in some ways this is a little bit of, I don't want to like draw the conclusion or the connection too much, but like when they did Batman Begins, and they were like, what would this practically be like? Like, you'd have to buy Batman masks somewhere. Where would the Batmobile come from? And this is really saying like, okay, you're the undead. You have to live by night. And also, if you can't shit where you eat, so you have to be on the move constantly.
Yeah.
And
you
so
get tracked or traced.
Yeah, and you definitely need people watching your back. So you need a group of you, but it also can't be too big. It needs to look like a family unit.
Yeah. And it was interesting, a bit like Aliens, actually. Interesting, because I feel like there was a lot of parallels between Aliens and this. And that's probably because, wasn't she married to James Cameron at the time, or dating?
I don't know exactly what the actual story was. When Cameron helped get this made, he was married to somebody else. My guess is he and Ms. Bigelow were close at this point.
Or maybe afterwards or before.
Well, they acknowledged afterward when they got together after he'd been divorced. I don't know what Cameron was up to.
So maybe they were just like close friends.
Maybe yes, air quote close friends.
I cast no aspersions on James Cameron.
I mean, and I don't. He wasn't around when they were actually shooting the film or anything else like that either. So,
well, it's interesting you say that, because I was thinking his influence was kind of on it a bit, because which may, they could have still talked on the phone. They could have like talked before you started filming, but because even down to the fact that there's two family units, which is very similar to Aliens. There's the vampire family.
Mm-hmm.
And the human family, and stuff like even small things like the truck scene at the end, very much reminiscent of what he did in the end of Terminator 2 a few years later.
Mm-hmm.
There's also even the same biker guy in the bar, who's the same biker guy at the start of Terminator 2 goes, "You didn't say please," and tries to put out his stogie on Arnie. So it's like a lot of little things like crossed over there, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think Cameron was probably involved at the story stage and kind of what I think the guy writes a fairly tight story. And I imagine that there was probably some stuff that he had some influence on. I mean, Aliens is being shown in the one movie theater that they drive past, right?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I mean, there's definitely some connection that's going on there that I think helped get this together. Like, if you wanted to imagine what low budget camera would be, and it's funny you should say that also, because when I said we were doing Near Dark, somebody referred to it as, "Oh, you mean Terminator Vampire?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, there's certain comparisons,
quite,
yeah. But if you want to talk about like a badass going into a bar and wreaking havoc, that happens in this movie too."
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There is a bit of that. I mean, I think partly my problem with this as well is the two leads are the least interesting characters for me. And I think even when I was 20, they were. And that's partly, I'm not going to like have a go at the actors, although I don't think they are the greatest actors, but I think they're working with what they've been told to do and they're making the best of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think their characters are the most boring and they take out most of the screen time. So, like, as soon as Lance Henriksen and Bill Paxton turn up, you're like, whoa, this is more like it. And then on the other side of that, you've got like, very kind of sensitive portrayal. He's not being the badass he was as Jack Death in Trances, but you've still got a very heroic, real performance as a dad of Tim Thomerson just saying, what did happen to my son?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's doing anything about this.
Yeah, and I think that is, he's supposed to be this like Oklahoma, I think they're an Oklahoma farmer, or rancher, and all of that feels to me like super understandable. Like, mom's not around, he's protecting, daughter and his son who's about to go off into the world or help with the ranch or whatever will happen there. But he's entering manhood.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was a nice grounded portrayal of a kind of John Wayne sort of
patriarch.
Yeah, and it all made sense to me. Yeah, he goes all the way down to Waco, when he's looking for him, which I'm like, if anyone's going to tell you what to do, it's not to just drive in a random direction looking for somebody. The country's way too big, and that was probably one of my biggest beefs with the movie is it's very clear the people who made it are from California and don't know the rest of the country.
Yeah,
in a way that I think if you made this movie now, the people would know to probably Google a few things. But we didn't have Google in 1987; things got missed. But the young woman who plays the May, I believe. I mean, May's more or less written as girl. She doesn't have a lot of outstanding personality traits that you really glom onto. And I think it's a little bit of a shame because I do think that it's trying to do something with like vampires and romance that like I will go ahead and say I'm not sure Twilight exactly nails. And
there you go. I was about to say, we were talking about Twilight earlier, and a little bit, Twilighty before Twilight.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that she meets this human she's attracted to. And she's like, we could be together forever, But again, like The Hunger, it's a bit of a false promise. It's like, she's not really enjoying this existence, but then she's trying to tie somebody else into it without really giving them all the facts. The same as what happened to her, Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the interesting thing of this like weird family dynamic they have is like she was turned by the eternal 12-year-old, Joshua Miller,
the lost boy.
Yeah.
And he's kind of pissed. He's very similar to like I'm doing really badly with actors and actresses' names, but the one from Interview with the Vampire, who's like, I'm stuck in this child's body and I'm a woman, and Tom Cruise like laughing at her. Yeah, it's kind of similar dynamic where you have this very old spirit or creature stuck in a child's body, so that they're not being taken seriously, or they can't do certain things they want to do, like seduce people, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it did not appear that anyone had been off reading Interview with the Vampire before they made this, and it's certainly 6 years before Interview with the Vampire was released. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of weird marker to me of where horror was. Someone trying to do something a bit different with a vampire movie.
Because even Lost Boys was kind of like, hey, cool teenagers, we can do what we want. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't really like a downside, the fact that they were young in that. They were kind of like the perfect age in a way.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like too young.
Yeah. Yeah. And I won't go totally to the mat. Like, I don't think that this is like the ideal movie, but I do think that this is, for me, one of my, probably top 3 vampire movies, which is not a giant category for me either, I should say. I mean, let me also separate out Dracula movies from vampire movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
that probably makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
now you're playing with it.
So we have a lot of Christopher Lee movies to get through before we get to Near Dark, but this is
my second favorite film with the biker guy who's in the bar.
But it has a lot of things I like. I mean, I also saw this when I was probably 16, 15, something like that. I wasn't even 20 yet when we rented it. It was unlike anything I had seen before. I think in its way, and this is an interesting thing that I'm witnessing now on the Twitters, is kind of what people think is well shot versus not well shot. Yeah. And I guarantee you, today's kids raised on their Zack Snyder movies will go, this is very badly shot. This movie is gorgeously shot.
It's fantastic. It looks fantastic, especially for the budget, because she must have had like no budget really.
Yeah. They really knew how to use just a few lights, and what they're evoking with like what the scenes look like. And I heard her on the commentary go, oh, it's so painterly. I hate it when people talk about that unless you're doing something really specific. But it does bring in like just punches of color against this like pure black background in a lot of the night shots. A lot of
the dawn's just coming, and the thread of the dawn. And I think out of all the vampire films, this is the one where, because normally, say take a Dracula film and, they're all kind of like, chugging along, and then it's the last scene where Van Helsing pulls the curtain off. And it's like, that's got him. Whereas this, all the way through, that's the huge threat that, they're taping up the windows of the car, we've got to get undercover. And it's always there in the background. We can't be out in the lights, which is really good, I think.
Yeah.
That they was always there.
Yeah. I mean, I think Near Dark would be a fascinating thing to turn into a 6-episode something to get more into, what is flashbacks, what is their life actually like kind of day to day, from this kind of like weird, on the road experience that they've got, that they have to constantly, like if you're talking about like the not Days of Heaven, Badlands sort of experience. Like what is it like for them? We know that they say they've been doing this. We only get like one night to see what that's actually like for them.
And I was thinking when they set fire to the RV, I'm like, you've kind of downgraded there. Now you're all stuck in this much smaller station wagon. now it's like Chevy Chase. It's like you're gonna get on everybody's nerves.
Yeah. And they do get on each other's nerves. I mean, it does very much operate like this,
Well, Bill Paxton's playing the BMX at the little kid vampire. There you go. He's like, thanks. It's like they kind of just dicking with each other. And Bill Paxton cheating at cards. That's kind of funny. I was impressed early on by the script, because I think the first scene where May meets Caleb, the two kind of young lovers. It's a little bit I mean, I'm too clever, maybe, but it's like, yeah, there's lots of. They have a conversation where he's like, are you here? Are you looking for a bite to eat? And she just kind of looks at him, and and there's like the fact that he tries to show the horse to impress her, and the horse is obviously scared of her, so he kind of runs off, and then he lassos her because he's still kind of a bit of a cowboy. I mean,
Oh
this is
yeah.
very, this is very 80s type behavior that probably wouldn't fly on a date these days. But
So I think you get to the right part of Oklahoma, it's perfectly
it
fine. But yeah.
depends on the girl, I guess. Depends on
Mm.
the small town. But it's like, but he lassos her, and he's like, "Oh, well, you're strong," and stuff. And just like there's lots of clever little hints that something's a bit off here.
Yeah, I mean, we all know we showed up for a vampire movie for this. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
But if you came in here blind, I think you'd be like, "Oh, something's what's going on here?"
yeah. Yeah,
We're talking about the stars, that I'll still be here when those stars are burnt out.
yeah, and interestingly, they were saying on the director's commentary that sequence was actually shot in a studio.
Oh,
Like
okay.
it looks totally, you'd never know. But she's like, we wanted to get it that dark in that scene, so it's
Yeah.
basically like one light and the truck going, and that's more or less it. But yeah, I think the cast is really interesting. Lance Henriksen is
Great.
about as far as you're gonna get from George Hamilton Dracula or whatever. But he's and he's been around since the Civil War, and all of that seems to kind of make sense. I will admit I thought Jeanette Goldstein was like kind of hot in this movie.
No, she's very hot. She's very hot, and I felt she was a bit underused,
and that's my problem.
I feel like Bill Paxton definitely he had his moments. He was showreel, and Lance Henriksen was doing his thing that he always does, where he's always incredibly good, incredibly dependable. But yeah, she didn't really get that much. She had a couple of little lines, but she should have been given more, I think.
Yeah, and like we'll say sometimes on the podcast, the worst thing that that is not the worst thing that can happen, is that you want more.
Yeah, that's true.
And I definitely would have liked. This movie's not that long. I think what was it, like 2 hours or
90
something?
minutes.
Yeah. And I
love when they're picking up victims and they're staging different. Like the little kid pretends he's been knocked off his bike. And then they kind of pick up the dodgy hitchhiker, who then holds them up and says, like, I'm going to have fun with you guys. And they just look at each other. And it's like, I really like that.
Yeah, I thought it was great. And I mean, I will always come back to the absolute horror of the bar scene, of like realizing this place has one door.
Yeah.
And we're about to watch shit go down in a really bad way. In a way that, I mean, my movie viewing, obviously at age 15 or 16, was pretty limited, but
I'm probably just too hardened. I'm probably just like, that's nothing for me. Yeah.
But yeah, it was I mean, it was this like invasion scene of it, and their total superiority, that they've got this straight through to the end, and it's this also, while you're watching the whole time, what's Caleb going to do, because this is also his opportunity. I was a little surprised the first time I saw it that he did not like go full, because we hadn't really seen because I hadn't read Dracula yet either. The novel of Dracula suggests that blood transfusions will work to keep someone from becoming the undead. That was
talking about vampire lore. So we got the sunlight, but we never see any fangs. I don't think.
Never hear vampire. No garlic.
So it's pretty much just like cutting a throat with a razor and then drinking the blood, I guess. They're obviously invulnerable to like being shot and stuff, but we never see any stakes. We never go in that direction of garlic or stakes or anything. So really, it's just sunlight's the big one. And the fact that they're kind of super strong,
Yeah. I mean, they're some sort of like super predator for humans.
I mean, no flying, no changing into animals or anything.
which all of which I I'm a fan of Dracula turning into wolves and mist and rats and everything else.
Yeah.
But I do like that this take really kind of sticks with just this like much more pragmatic view of this, these kind of super predators that the vampires are.
Well, that's
And,
also
and
like very Eric Red, I think, because like he did like the Hitch obviously is like a bit of a spin on Psychopath or whatever, or the
mhm.
slasher film. And again, out in the middle of nowhere, this guy who just keeps popping up and doing crazy things. And then he did that werewolf film Bad Moon, which I think I talked about in one of our old podcasts. But I mean, I don't think we ever got
No,
around
we
to
never
watching it.
saw it. No.
But that was again like a little bit of a different spin on the werewolf, where this guy gets bitten at the start, and then he kind of goes back to his family, but he's like trying to hide what he's becoming. And so yeah, he's quite good at kind of, I guess, like grounding, like you said, these kind of like different creatures, or different like classic creatures.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the does the love story between Caleb and May, like, does it absolutely nail it? I think you're right about them being a little bland. They have kind of this nice set of scenes at the very beginning. And
Yeah,
I think they have like one or two other kind of nice scenes, like when she first feeds him.
yeah,
But
yeah.
aside from that, it's it. I think it's a little underwritten. Kind of, there's just so much has to happen in a pretty short runtime.
Well, they almost become, or at least she almost becomes kind of background. I think the last third, because
Mm-hmm.
then it's more the family against Caleb, really,
Yeah.
because especially once they take his sister. Um, and so yeah, she kind of gets shunted a bit to the background. And and for me, the ending is a bit like a bit too happy and easy resolution. It's like top her up. Oh, she's better now, even though she's been a vampire for 50 years.
Yeah.
She's like she's okay now. She's like, oh, Sam, the sunrise. And I was a bit like, yeah, me though. I like the end of my films, people being shot in the head like the fly. So
Yeah, no, I get it. And but as when I was like 15, 16, seeing it, that was very appealing, right? That was like,
yeah,
okay, there's a happy
it's
ending.
a happy ending. It's for the
Um
masses.
yeah. And I think that's kind of what they were going for. But the funny thing is it looks and feels like an 80s indie movie.
Yeah,
Um
yeah,
and
yeah.
and I don't remember necessarily this coming out to theaters. I
I would
know
think
what
it
they
would
were
have a
doing.
small release or limited release, probably. I
Yeah.
don't think it did very well. I think it kind of built up momentum on video a bit. And even then, I think it stayed more cultish. It didn't like, become one of those films that, like Austin Powers or whatever, or the first Bourne movie that kind of did okay in the cinema, but then did massively on video. I think it just kind of chugged along, and with people going, have you seen that? If you like horror, that's a really clever horror film.
I think that's right, and I think it's really odd that there's not a widely available Blu-ray or 4K right now.
Well, I,
Um,
I I struggled to get the old DVD, because I think for a while they were trying to charge silly prices for that, and then finally I guess a few became available, and it came back down to a kind of manageable price. But I'm like, is that really the last good release of this we've had 20 years ago?
it sure felt like it. And I ended up getting mine through eBay from like a Goodwill in Arkansas or something.
Hmm.
They I think they didn't know what they had, and so I got it for much cheaper than what I saw it otherwise going for.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, it's expensive, which is part of why I just gave it to Marshall, because I was like, otherwise you're gonna to see this movie, it's gonna cost you like 40 or $50.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that's not what I paid for it. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty it makes me wonder whenever that happens if there's either about to be a new release on home video, or someone is currently like messing around with like trying to turn it into something else as a remake, which totally would make sense in today's market.
Oh yeah, no, I can definitely see a reboot of this or a remake. Although I do agree with you, I think a TV show would actually do it more justice. But maybe hasn't really got the legs for that. Because it's not like people are going to go, "Hey, near dog," like, I mean, maybe it's like The Hunger. It's like kids aren't going to go, "Wow, they're remaking The Hunger." Even we're like, I'll just watch the old one probably. But yeah, no, I thought it was, like I say, I enjoyed it. I mean, it's like I say, I don't think I've changed my position at all. I think I feel exactly the same, which is definitely respect it. I love the intelligence behind it. I love the craftsmanship. I love Great School by Tangerine Dream, which
we haven't talked about that at all. But yeah, it right around the same time as The Keep and the
Sorcerer and
Risky Business.
Yeah, Sorcerer and A Legend. They were pretty busy with film schools around this time. In fact, this is probably one of their last big ones, I think.
Yeah.
But but they did a really good job because it wasn't like too intrusive, but it was like nice and very kind of mood enhancing piece.
And had this come out like 4 or 5 years later, I guarantee you someone would have insisted on like really hitting a steel guitar over the top of this. Like they would have been like, "No, we got to like in every shot."
And a song.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody did get Bon Jovi to do a song, John Bon Jovi to do a song. But it was no. So so I definitely do recommend this. I mean, I think it's a very, very well made horror film. But like I say, it just doesn't. Unlike The Hunger, it just didn't. Maybe I saw it at the wrong time. Maybe I saw it too late. It just didn't get its claws into me. So it's almost like every time I see it, I kind of slide off it instead of kind of engage with it. Yeah, I don't want to bite it in the neck.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would say that if you're looking for something a little different, and you have $50 to blow on eBay for a 20-year-old DVD, I guess watch this or check it out from the library, hopefully. But it
streaming? It must be streaming.
No.
Oh, it isn't?
No, that's how I'm like, something's going on. They're doing something with this right now. But there's no way the rights are in this kind of limbo.
So I must have been quite lucky because I feel like I managed to get one for about $20, my DVD.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I just dropped on something like you, but yeah, I didn't notice it was harder than most of the stuff, even stuff like Vampire, to kind of get hold of.
Yeah, Vampire was no problem. I had got a free subscription to something through Amazon and watched it.
Away. Please take 2 copies. Burn them. But yeah, no, because you'd have thought Catherine Bigelow by this point would have enough, power. But then, hey, you can't get hold of a decent copy of The Keep either. So it's, obviously that's a rights thing, I think. But
I think The Keep is about to get released as a Blu-ray.
And we said that for 20 years now. I feel like
that's true. That's funny because when I saw the announcement, that was what everybody responded with. Heard this before.
Yeah. I bet if you go back to our first ever podcast, we said that.
Keep's about to come out.
It's coming out any day now. But yeah, no. I totally recommend this for Halloween. Probably not a party film. You probably don't want it on in the background. But if you want like a kind of like a nice kind of slightly creepy, a little bit different, and I'd totally forgotten until I put it on that I'm like, oh, this has actually got really good Texas connection. This is actually like kind of happening close to her.
Yeah, and I think that's part of how I responded to it so much as a as a youth. It was like this, I wasn't living in that part of the country. I was living in Houston when I saw it the first time.
Yeah. But it was the last time I would have watched it because I was still in England. So
right. And that's the thing. And that's part of what I think resonates when I said kind of at the beginning of like, well, it's such an American version. It's like, this is what I see when I look out my window. These are people I recognize from, the I don't recognize necessarily the characters who are in Dracula or as people, not like, there's Van Helsing's running around all over London every day, but but if you're going to try and bring it down to that kind of like more practical reality, how would this work sort of thing, that this definitely felt very kind of Texas, although it was filmed in Arizona, in like Cottonwood or something like that outside of Phoenix. So because of the time of year and stuff that they ended up filming there.
Well, and I like how he tries to get home, but of course, it's actually very similar to the older brother character, the Jason Patrick character in Lost Boys.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of knows he's been infected, but he's kind of trying to fight it, and he's also trying to go back to his normal life, but he can't. And I mean, the blood transfusion, I think a little bit of an easy fix for me, but I mean, what else are you going to do, really?
I think at the end of the day, that's kind of where I come down on it. Is like it has good roots in being something that was good enough for Bram Stoker. So who am I to argue with Catherine Bigelow and Eric Red?
And didn't Peter Cushing do that in one of the Draculas? Was it Brides of Dracula? I know he soldered ironed his vampire bites.
I think with the French woman. I think he might have.
So I think he did at least once. So we have seen it before.
It's Cushing approved.
And they tried to do it with Lucy, didn't they? In Bram Stoker's Dracula.
And that came straight from the book of like, in the book, it's like a much more slow, like they're dying in bed over a course of weeks, and so they keep giving them blood and bringing them back.
Would have worked if the stupid maid hadn't left the windows open.
There's no maids in Oklahoma.
There's no drawing rooms or cravats.
No.
Okay. But
you don't build an insane asylum in your backyard either in Oklahoma.
There might be Tom Waits in Oklahoma, though.
Yeah, that's true.
He'd probably be wandering around acting the same. But totally. Well, like I say, totally recommend this. Check it out if you haven't seen it. I'm sure if you're of a certain age like us, you probably have at least once.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely worth a revisit. And like I say, I don't want to sound like I'm damning it, because I'm not. I do really like it, but I think maybe just a bit too clinical for me.
I can totally see that. Yeah.
Just like it doesn't have. Ironically, it's a vampire film without a heart.
Well, I think there's a bit of a separation between the audience and the main characters and their story. And I think that's you're right to call that out. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess only leaves us to say Happy Halloween.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy Halloween, everybody. And after this, we're going to start getting into. We're not going to do Thanksgiving movies, I don't think. But we will.
Thanksgiving films?
There's like 2, I think, that they've ever made.
Some terrible slasher from 1978 that took place at Thanksgiving or something. Or didn't they just spoof that? Didn't get Edgar Wright to spoof that?
That'd be awesome.
Those false trailers,
like Black Gobble or something. Yeah. But Simon just told me what we're doing for Christmas, and I laughed hard, and so I hope you will at least come back for our Christmas viewings. So
should be an experience.
Okay. All right. Happy Halloween, everybody.
All right.
That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.